When you think of art, you might think of places such as Austria or Paris, France. Art movements such as the Renaissance with Van Gogh, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Donatello, many more. Neoclassicism, pop art with Andy Warhol. But there are also other art movements that contributed to art, such as symbolism, Art Nouveau, Vienna Succession, and modern art. These four were influenced heavily by a man named Gustav Klimt. He was a genius and a prodigy, but he made erotic work. Some people disliked him for it, but he was a genius nonetheless. Today I will discuss Gustav Klimt and his life. I will begin with his childhood, his growing years, and go on then to speak about his artistic career extensively until his death. So let's begin with his childhood. Gustav grew up in a small suburb of Baumgarten, southwest of Vienna. I would consider it a grim childhood. He was the second of seven kids. He was a big family. And his brothers, Ernst and George, they showed promise in art. His mother was an aspiring but unsuccessful musical performer. Her name was Anna Finster, and his father was a gold engraver. His name was Ernst Klimt. So his brother was a junior. According to the art story contributors, the Klimt family was poor, but this is part and due because of scarce work in Habsburg Empire at the time. This was because of the 1873 stock market crash, which according to the World of Habsburger was caused by the massive fall of shares in Vienna stock, something that was similarly happening in the US at the same time. So, this was a pretty poor, maybe not so flexible childhood. But despite that, Klimt would grow up. He would make his mark on the world and really shine, do many great things. And so let's talk about his artistic career. Well, he started rather young, according to Gale at the age of 14, where he was encouraged to take the entrance exam for the Kunstgewerbeschule. It was a Viennese school of arts and crafts. He passed with distinction and attended there for 7 years, starting from 1876, alongside his brother Ernst and another young painter by the name of Franz Mach. He intended to become a drawing master and teach the 19th century equivalent of a public secondary school, Bergerschule. And during these years in school, in 1879, he formed a studio with his brother Ernst and Franz Mach. Here they made art for different buildings and companies. For example, the graffiti designs of Lofberger for the Art Historical Museum. During this time, they received the Emperor's Prize for the staircases of Bergtheater. It was one of their accomplishments. In 1892, Ernst Klimt passed. Gustav later left Franz Mach in 1897 to join the succession alongside other Vienna painters as their president. The Vienna succession was a group of Vienna painters, who revolted against academic art. They wanted a different type of style. They loved art such as Art Nouveau, that style of art. They were dedicated to the Gesamtkunstwerk, which was a total work of art. But this became an issue for many of their painters. And in 1905, one of their other issues with their local galleries, the Klimt group resigned from the succession. The Klimt group was essentially Klimt and a few of his followers or people who looked up to him. They left because of local galleries where they would present their art and possibly sell it. I want to speak now about his later life, closer to his death. When Gustav Klimt in 1898 to 1908, he perfected his style of art, mixing pre-modern and modern elements. And during this time, he was still in the succession, but this is where he made his greatest works of art with this style. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, these most famous works of art were The Kiss in 1908, 1909, The Fritz Riedler 1906, and the Del Bloch-Bar 1907. Bloch-Bar won, In these, he treated a human figure with no shadows and heightened the lush sensuality of skin with composed areas of brilliant decoration. Later on, Klimt then threw away this style of art. He stopped using gold and silver leaves and essentially all manners of decoration. Instead, used mixtures of colors such as salmon and yellow. But he still kept his subjects. During this time, he was still making art. Some might think he's burnt out at this time, but no, he was so prolific and actually made a staggering amount of art. All of those that were which they were erotic, naked bodies and females. So people did not like that as much, and they were seldom exhibited. In January 11th, 1918, Klimt suffered a stroke, and he could no longer draw or sketch, and this put him in despair. And during this time, he caught influenza, the flu. And in February 6th, he died, alongside other painters, such as Otto Wagner, Koloman Moser, and Egon Schiele. So in summary, Gustav Klimt was a brilliant, a genius. He was a prodigy. Although some of his work might have been disliked, and he grew up poor, he made a mark on this world, and he was very essential to many different art movements. Thank you. That was my speech for Gustav Klimt. Thank you for listening.